He said, "Man, that sure is some good-looking stagecoach. That's what they call a bus, a motorhome."
Ernest Borgnine's journey to Hollywood was anything but planned. Born Ernest Borgnine in 1917 in Hamden, Connecticut, he was the son of Italian immigrants chasing the American dream. At the age of 2, his parents separated, and his mother took him to Italy, where he spent the next 5 years immersed in a completely new world. Living in Carpi near Modena, he spoke only Italian and absorbed the culture as if he had been born there. However, in 1923, his parents reconciled, and the family returned to the United States, marking a fresh start. His father changed his name from Camillo to Charles, and their surname was shortened to Borgnine in an attempt to assimilate and sound more American. For young Ernest, this shift in identity was just the first of many transformations that would shape his future. Growing up in New Haven, Connecticut, he had no interest in acting. Unlike many Hollywood hopefuls, he never dreamed of the big screen or sneaked into theaters. Instead, he was drawn to sports, enjoying the physicality and competition. His high school yearbook had no mention of drama or theater, giving no indication that he would ever step in front of a camera. However, fate had other plans, beginning with his enlistment in the U.S. Navy in 1935. Fresh out of high school, he was stationed on the USS Lamberton, serving on the destroyer for 6 years. By 1941, he was ready to move on and received an honorable discharge. But just 2 months later, the attack on Pearl Harbor changed everything. Unwilling to sit back while his country went to war, he re-enlisted in January 1942, this time serving aboard the USS Sylph, a patrol yacht tasked with defending the Atlantic coast. The war changed him, instilling discipline and a deep sense of camaraderie that later shaped the way he portrayed military characters on screen. By the time he was discharged in 1945, he had risen to the rank of gunner's mate first class and had earned multiple military honors. He seriously considered making the Navy his career and nearly re-enlisted for another 10 years. If he had, Hollywood would have never known his name. But then his mother made a suggestion that altered his course. She told him he had a forceful personality and should try acting. At first, the idea seemed strange. With no experience, no connections, and no clear path forward, he had little reason to believe it could work. But he took the leap, enrolling in the Randall School of Drama in Hartford before joining Virginia's Barter Theatre. It was far from glamorous. Actors were often paid in vegetables instead of money, as the theatre had been founded during the Great Depression with a unique concept: audiences could trade food for tickets. Borgnine didn't mind. He took whatever roles he could, performing night after night, and when he wasn't on stage, he was behind the scenes painting sets, fixing costumes, and even scrubbing toilets. In one performance, he had to chase a live chicken across the stage, only for it to escape into the audience, causing chaos. The moment taught him an invaluable lesson: how to improvise, engage with the audience, and turn disaster into entertainment. He also worked alongside future stars like Gregory Peck and Patricia Neal, learning from them. His big break came when he landed a role in Tennessee Williams' The Glass Menagerie. Though he thought his performance was terrible, the audience disagreed, and the success of the play got him noticed. By 1949, he had made it to Broadway, debuting in Harvey, a long-running play starring Hollywood legend James Stewart. It hadn't been an easy road. Casting directors struggled to place him. His face was too mean for comedy, too funny for drama. But Harvey proved them wrong. Playing a male nurse, Borgnine found his place on stage and learned by closely observing Stewart, even keeping a notebook to record observations. The play ran for an impressive 1,775 performances, providing the stability he needed. Then, television came calling. In 1951, he made his TV debut in Captain Video and His Video Rangers, a low-budget sci-fi series where he played a villain. Though it wasn't a prestigious role, it caught the attention of Columbia Pictures, which offered him a small part in The Whistle at Eaton Falls. It wasn't much, but it was a foot in the door. His breakout film role came in From Here to Eternity, 1953, where his real-life experience in the Navy made him a natural fit for military roles. However, nothing could prepare him for playing Sergeant Fatso Judson, a cruel and sadistic character who was the polar opposite of Borgnine's real-life persona, known for his kindness. In one of the film's most disturbing scenes, Judson brutally beats Frank Sinatra's character, Angelo Maggio, to death with a nightstick. The performance was so intense that Sinatra initially doubted Borgnine could embody such a menacing role, but those doubts disappeared once filming began. Borgnine immersed himself in the character, isolating himself for days to get into the right mindset. When the cameras rolled, he became someone else entirely. His performance was so convincing that Sinatra refused to speak to him off-camera for weeks, and even crew members avoided him. The emotional toll extended beyond the set. Borgnine later admitted he had nightmares about the scene for months. Audiences reacted even more strongly, with some so disturbed by his performance that they sent him hate mail. Ernest Borgnine's portrayal of Sergeant Fatso Judson in From Here to Eternity was so intense that audiences struggled to separate the actor from the character, leading to death threats. The role took a toll on him, but it also catapulted him to stardom. Just 2 years later, he shocked Hollywood again with Marty, where he played an ordinary butcher searching for love, a stark contrast to his previous villainous role. The film, made on a modest budget of $343,000, defied expectations and won Best Picture. At the 1955 Academy Awards, Borgnine, at 38, won Best Actor, making him one of the oldest actors to win for a debut leading role. His victory was even more surprising as he triumphed over Hollywood legends like James Dean and Spencer Tracy. During his simple acceptance speech, he thanked his mother for encouraging him to pursue acting. However, he almost never got the role. Director Delbert Mann initially wanted Rod Steiger, who had played Marty in a television version. Borgnine wasn't even considered at first, but a chance encounter at a Hollywood party changed everything. His natural charm impressed the producers, leading to a screen test where he delivered such an authentic performance that Mann later remarked, "Ernest Borgnine didn't act Marty, he was Marty." The role not only transformed his career but also reshaped Hollywood, proving that big stars and massive budgets weren't necessary to connect with audiences. Refusing to be typecast, Borgnine continued to take on diverse roles. In 1967, at 50 years old, he played General Worden in The Dirty Dozen, a film that became a cultural phenomenon. Committed to authenticity, he insisted on performing his own stunts, including a dangerous leap from a moving train, earning admiration from younger co-stars like Lee Marvin and Charles Bronson. 2 years later, he again surprised audiences with The Wild Bunch, one of the most violent westerns ever made. His character, Dutch Engstrom, was ruthless yet strangely likable. One particularly haunting scene showed him gunning down dozens of men while laughing like a madman, a moment that stayed with him for years. Meanwhile, his transition to television was just as unexpected. His big break came with McHale's Navy, where he played the laid-back Lieutenant Commander Quinton McHale. Unlike his intense film roles, this character was easygoing, leading a misfit crew with humor and charm. What most people didn't realize was that his performance was influenced by his real-life Navy service during World War II aboard the USS Sylph. However, McHale's Navy wasn't without challenges. During the second season, a pyrotechnic device malfunctioned, causing severe burns to his face and hands, forcing a 3-week filming hiatus. When he returned, his dedication remained unwavering, and that same year, he earned an Emmy nomination for the role. Surprisingly, the show even had an impact on real-life military strategy. In 1965, a classified memo revealed that the U.S. Navy had consulted with the show's writers, believing McHale's creative problem-solving could be applied in actual operations. The result was Operation McHale, a series of naval training exercises inspired by the sitcom, though details remain classified. Borgnine's television career continued to evolve in unexpected ways. In 1984, at 67 years old, he took on the role of Dominic Santini in Airwolf, a high-energy action series about a futuristic helicopter. Despite his age, he refused to slow down, performing many of his own stunts. That commitment nearly cost him his life in 1985 when a helicopter lost control and crashed just feet away from him. His quick reflexes saved him, allowing him to escape with only minor injuries. Then came a role that ended him to a whole new generation, Mermaid Man in SpongeBob SquarePants. It all began with his grandson, a huge fan of the show, who repeatedly urged him to be part of it. At a charity event in 1998, Borgnine mentioned this to a Nickelodeon executive, who promptly asked him to read a few lines on the spot. Using only a napkin as a makeshift script, he delivered a performance so memorable that he was immediately cast. Mermaid Man became a fan favorite, appearing in 17 episodes over 13 years. The show's creators even included nods to Borgnine's real-life Navy service in the character's dialogue. His final recording session took place just 2 weeks before his passing in 2012 at the age of 95, making him one of the oldest active voice actors at the time. Despite becoming a television legend, Borgnine initially dismissed the medium. In 1956, fresh off his Oscar win, he turned down the lead role in The Real McCoys, scoffing that, "Television is a fad, it'll never last." At the time, most movie stars saw television as a step down. However, in 1961, a life-changing encounter at a charity event made him reconsider. A young boy battling a terminal illness told him that watching his movies brought him joy during hospital stays. That moment made Borgnine realize that television wasn't just about entertainment, it had the power to reach and comfort people in ways films couldn't. By the time he changed his mind, The Real McCoys had already become a hit with Walter Brennan in the lead. The missed opportunity was a lesson for him, and when McHale's Navy came along just months later, he seized it. Years later, he admitted his mistake, saying in an interview, "I was a fool to think TV was beneath me. It's not about the size of the screen, it's about the size of the audience's heart." Beyond his career, Borgnine's personal life was filled with drama. Over 95 years, he married 5 times, experiencing both heartbreak and scandal before finally finding lasting devotion. His first wife, Rhoda Kemmins, was with him before fame. They married in 1949 and had a daughter, Nancy, in 1952. For nearly a decade, they built a life together, but as Borgnine's career soared, their marriage crumbled. By 1958, it was over. His next chapter in love began with Katy Jurado, a fiery Mexican actress known for her passionate presence. Ernest Borgnine's marriage to Mexican actress Katy Jurado in 1959 was marked by intense passion and equally intense public arguments, leading to their divorce in 1963. However, his shortest and most infamous marriage was to Broadway legend Ethel Merman in 1964. What initially seemed like a Hollywood fairy tale quickly turned disastrous. Their honeymoon in Japan was overshadowed by Borgnine's overwhelming popularity, which left Merman feeling neglected. The tension escalated until, in a fit of rage, she threw a diamond and pearl ring into a koi pond. Less than 5 weeks after their wedding, she filed for divorce. Merman never spoke about the marriage again, but her autobiography made a strong statement. Under the chapter titled My Marriage to Ernest Borgnine, she left the page entirely blank. Borgnine later admitted how much that silence hurt, calling it a slap in the face he would never forget. Following that short-lived disaster, Borgnine married Donna Rancourt in 1965, with whom he had 3 children, Sharon, Christopher, and Diana. Though their marriage lasted longer than his previous ones, it ended in divorce in 1972. That same year, he met Norwegian businesswoman Tove Trays at a Las Vegas party. Aware of his reputation, she hesitated at first, but Borgnine won her over with his charm. They married in 1973, and for the first time, he found lasting stability. Tove built a successful beauty business, and Borgnine proudly supported her, even joking that he was the oldest living Avon lady after appearing in her advertisements. Their love endured for nearly 4 decades, longer than all his previous marriages combined. In his final years, he credited Tove for keeping him going, and in his last interview, he expressed his deep love for her. On July 8, 2012, at the age of 95, Borgnine passed away with Tove by his side, finally having found a love that lasted. Meanwhile, Borgnine's strong personality often led to clashes on set, most notably with Shelley Winters during the Poseidon Adventure, 1972. The disaster film, which followed passengers fighting for survival after their ship capsized, saw Borgnine playing a tough detective and Winters his determined wife. While their performances were gripping, behind the scenes, tensions ran high. Winters was known for her meticulous approach to acting, even arriving on set with a 20-page document outlining her character's backstory. She frequently pushed for script changes, leading to conflicts with the screenwriter, and Borgnine found himself caught in the middle. Their biggest challenge came during a grueling underwater scene, which Winters insisted on performing herself to prove she still had the skills of a champion swimmer at 51. What was supposed to be a quick shoot stretched into a grueling 14-hour day, requiring 65 takes. While the frustration was evident, Winter's performance earned her an Academy Award nomination. Despite their on-set struggles, Borgnine later acknowledged that her instincts were often right, describing her as a force of nature, difficult, unpredictable, but undeniably talented. In the end, their clashes added to the authenticity of their performances. Borgnine also faced challenges working alongside his idol, Spencer Tracy, in Bad Day at Black Rock, 1955. Filming in Lone Pine, California, under scorching 100-degree heat, Borgnine was more intimidated by Tracy than by the conditions. At 54, Tracy was a two-time Academy Award winner, known for his understated yet commanding performances. Borgnine, at 37, was still proving himself, and Tracy's habit of improvising and subtly changing lines kept him on edge. During a crucial scene, Tracy threw in an unexpected line, causing Borgnine to freeze, an unscripted moment that made it into the final cut. Director John Sturges preferred long, uninterrupted takes, which were second nature for Tracy but nerve-wracking for Borgnine. One particularly difficult scene saw Borgnine flubbing his lines 7 times in a row, visibly frustrating Tracy. The tension between them spilled into their on-screen dynamic, adding weight to their characters' confrontation. This was especially evident during the film's iconic diner fight scene, where Tracy's one-armed war veteran had to overpower Borgnine's short-tempered thug through sheer skill. In reality, Borgnine was physically stronger, but Tracy's ability to command the scene made the fight a cinematic classic. Ernest Borgnine stood 5 feet 9 inches and weighed around 210 pounds, while Spencer Tracy, though slightly taller at 5 feet 10 inches, was much lighter at 160 pounds. Their physical contrast made the fight scene even more intense, requiring 14 takes to get it right. By the 7th take, things got too real. Borgnine accidentally landed a hard punch to Tracy's jaw. The set went silent, but Tracy merely paused for a second and shrugged it off like nothing had happened. Already nervous, Borgnine became even more on edge and kept messing up, with the pressure mounting. Then came the moment that stuck with him for years. Tracy, staring him down, delivered the line, "You're not only wrong, you're wrong at the top of your voice." Something about the way he said it felt personal, as if he wasn't just talking to the character but to Borgnine himself. The final part of the fight involved Tracy flipping Borgnine onto a table using a single-arm judo throw, no stunt doubles, just 2 exhausted actors giving everything they had. The last take was filmed at exactly 4:17 p.m., and the frustration, sweat, and exhaustion made the scene feel raw and real. Despite everything, that fight changed things between them. Tracy, who had spent most of the shoot keeping Borgnine on edge, suddenly had a new kind of respect for him. Not long after, he recommended Borgnine for Marty, 1955, the role that won him an Oscar. Then, in 1954, Borgnine signed on to Johnny Guitar, expecting a typical film shoot, but instead, he found himself caught in the middle of one of Hollywood's most explosive feuds. Joan Crawford and Mercedes McCambridge didn't just dislike each other, they were at war. The trouble started when Crawford discovered that McCambridge's husband, Fletcher Markle, had once been involved with her, and that bit of history was enough to set her off. From that moment on, she made McCambridge's life miserable. One day, Borgnine watched as Crawford stormed onto the set, grabbed McCambridge's costumes, and tossed them onto the highway, forcing the crew to scramble and retrieve them before they were lost to the Arizona desert. Borgnine tried to focus on his work, but the tension made it nearly impossible. Crawford and McCambridge refused to be in the same room, which meant their scenes had to be filmed separately, forcing director Nicholas Ray to stitch everything together later. That was frustrating enough, but things escalated on September 3 when the feud turned physical. During a particularly heated moment, Crawford and McCambridge lost control, going from shouting to full-on swinging at each other. Borgnine and co-star Sterling Hayden had to jump in and pull them apart. It was chaos. Later, Borgnine called it the most unprofessional behavior he had ever seen. Despite all this, Crawford never turned on Borgnine. He actually got along with her, but he saw enough to know that her temper had no limits. One day, after a bad take, she grabbed a cup of hot coffee and threw it at a young production assistant, leaving him with second-degree burns. Borgnine never forgot that moment. In an interview years later, he described her as a ticking time bomb. You never knew what would set her off. Another time, he accidentally walked in on her screaming at a costume designer, her voice sharp and her eyes wild. He didn't say a word, he simply backed out of the room before she could turn her anger on him. However, Crawford wasn't all fury. On the last day of filming, she surprised the crew with personalized bottles of Pepsi. Her husband was the CEO of Pepsi-Cola, and this was her way of showing gratitude. But even that small kindness couldn't erase the tension. Before she left, she had one final showdown with McCambridge, warning her, loud enough for everyone to hear, that she would ruin her career. Years later, Borgnine reflected on the experience with a mix of awe and disbelief, saying, "Working with Joan was like walking on eggshells while juggling dynamite. She was brilliant, but boy, was she scary."